Narrator. Have you ever felt your soul being ripped from your body while everyone around you is clapping? Betrayal rarely comes in the form of a poisoned dagger in the dark. No, the most lethal betrayals are bathed in blinding light, wrapped in the cheers of a crowd, and delivered by the very hands you bled to heal. Imagine giving every drop of your youth, your magic, and your life force to pull a dying man from the abyss, only to watch him hand the crown you forged for him to a stranger. This is not just a story of a broken heart. This is the genesis of an empire forged from shattered illusions. Wolf King Stories warmly welcomes you to a tale of blood, frost, and ultimate retribution. If you want to witness how a discarded healer rises from the ashes of betrayal to become the most feared Luna in existence, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel and fuel our motivation to bring you more epic sagas. The Grand Hall of the Blackwood Pack was drowned in a blinding, almost suffocating radiance tonight. Thousands of candles flickered from colossal crystal chandeliers suspended from the vaulted ceilings, casting a brilliant glow upon the mirror-polished marble floors. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of chilled pine wood, the intoxicating aroma of vintage red wine, intricately spiced roasted meats, and the suffocatingly expensive perfumes of hundreds of elites dressed in their most extravagant evening gowns. The low hum of laughter and the sharp clinking of crystal glasses composed a symphony of prosperity and raw, unadulterated power. This was the Ascension Night, the most monumental event in the Southern Packs over the last decade. The night Alpha Adrian would officially claim the ancient crown and announce his destined mate, the Luna of the Pack. I remember how Evelyn stood in the shadowed corner of the second-floor balcony, draped in a simple yet exquisitely tailored cerulean silk dress. Her emerald eyes gently traced the tall, imposing figure of Adrian standing at the center of the hall. Clad in a midnight black suit, with silver wolf insignias pinned to his epaulets, he exuded the majestic, arrogant aura of a young, invincible king. Looking at him now, amidst all this glory, no one could possibly fathom the Adrian of 5 years ago. He had been a fractured, dying heir, lying on a blood-soaked bed, his body ravaged by brutal territorial wars. During those darkest years, it was Evelyn, the Pack's most gifted healer, who had sacrificed the vibrant spring of her youth and the very core of her life force to drag him back from the icy grip of death. She had stayed awake for hundreds of agonizing nights, siphoning the poison from his veins with her own magic, soothing the nightmarish terrors that threatened to tear his mind apart. Her love for him was never a loud, blazing inferno. It was a silent, unwavering devotion. She believed in him. She believed he was the leader who would bring eternal peace to their lands. He had held her scarred, healing hands in the pitch black of those nights, swearing a blood oath beneath the silver moon that when he ascended the throne, she would be his only queen, ruling Blackwood by his side with compassion. That whispered promise had been the sacred pillar holding Evelyn upright through years of selfless, unrequited sacrifice. The sudden blare of brass horns sliced through Evelyn's reverie, extinguishing the chatter in the grand hall. The crowd parted like a sea, carving a wide, velvet-draped path toward the podium of glory. Adrian ascended the red-carpeted steps, his gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. Evelyn's heart skipped a fragile beat. She delicately lifted the hem of her dress, preparing to descend the staircase as their eyes finally met. But a sudden, freezing glint flashed within Adrian's amber eyes, and he deliberately, coldly, looked away. Alpha Adrian. Proud members of Blackwood, tonight, we do not merely celebrate the strength of our pack, but we look forward to a greater future, to mightier alliances. To lead a rising empire, Blackwood requires a Luna who possesses not just beauty, but absolute political supremacy, a solid foundation for us to rise and dominate the entire South. Narrator. Evelyn froze. An uncanny chill crept up her spine, wrapping around her throat. The words political supremacy and mightier alliances had never once existed in the quiet, tender conversations they had shared in the dark. Adrian took a deep breath, his voice pitching higher, carrying a thinly veiled arrogance he could no longer hide. Alpha Adrian. And that person, the perfect piece for the throne of Blackwood, is the daughter of the Supreme Alpha of the Silver Crest Pack, Victoria. Narrator. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath for a fraction of a second before thunderous applause erupted. Through the grand double doors, Victoria made her entrance. She was radiant, a blinding goddess encased in a diamond-studded gown, her golden blonde hair cascading in perfect waves, an inherently arrogant smirk painted on her lips. Victoria glided forward, placing her delicate hand into Adrian's outstretched palm. They stood side by side, glamorous, opulent, and utterly flawless in the eyes of those who worshipped superficial power. Evelyn's entire universe collapsed into a vacuum of silence. The ambient noise was sucked out of the room, leaving only a deafening ringing in her ears. She stared blankly at Adrian and Victoria's intertwined fingers. In that excruciating fraction of time, the veil of her illusions was brutally ripped away. Every sacrifice, every drop of sweat, every ounce of blood she had poured into this man instantly turned to worthless ash. Adrian had discarded her, a common-born healer with no military backing, no material wealth to purchase a political contract named Victoria. The blindness of power had twisted the broken warrior she had once saved into a cold-blooded pragmatist. This betrayal was not a knife in the back. It was a public execution of her existence, witnessed by thousands of eyes. Whispers began to snake through the crowd as attendees noticed Evelyn standing on the balcony. Pitying glances and mocking murmurs pierced her skin like venomous needles. They whispered how naive she was, asking who would ever choose a mere nurse to be a queen. They reduced her years of sacrifice to being a mere tool for the Alpha's recovery. A tempest of humiliation, agony, and feral rage churned within Evelyn's mind. The wild instinct of the wolf inside her screamed, begging her to leap down, to tear the fake smile off Victoria's face, to demand answers from the traitor. But as she looked at Victoria's triumphant sneer and Adrian's evasive, mildly guilty yet profoundly cold eyes, a terrifying, absolute clarity descended upon Evelyn. What was the point of screaming? To prove she was a pathetic, broken thing begging for scraps of love? What was the point of holding on to resentment, to lower her own worth before those who never deserved her to begin with? No. Evelyn drew in a long, shuddering breath. The freezing air flooded her lungs, instantly extinguishing the fires of her anguish, leaving behind a surface as perfectly still and cold as a frozen lake. She began to walk down the stairs. Each step was measured, graceful, and entirely devoid of trembling. The crowd instinctively parted, yielding to her in a suffocating, unbearable silence. Adrian watched her approach, his lips parting slightly as if to offer some cheap, hollow justification. Evelyn stopped before the high podium. She did not even spare a glance at Victoria. Her emerald eyes drilled straight into Adrian's amber irises, piercing right through his facade of power to expose the cowardice rotting beneath. There were no tears, there were no reproaches. Slowly, deliberately, Evelyn took one step back, crossed her arms over her chest, and executed the deepest, most flawless bow a loyal subject could ever offer a new king. It was a bow of absolute reverence, perfect in every physical detail, yet entirely devoid of soul. It was a gesture that violently severed every tie, every memory, every ounce of grace between them. It was colder and more devastating than any curse she could have spoken. When Evelyn raised her head, she spoke only a single sentence. Her voice, crystal clear and chillingly serene, echoed through the dead silent hall. Evelyn, may you have a reign worthy of the choices you have made, Alpha Adrian. Narrator. Without another word, she pivoted on her heel. The cerulean silk swept across the marble floor. She walked away, her spine impeccably straight, her chin held high in undeniable pride. Evelyn walked out of the magnificent hall and into the freezing night, leaving behind a suffocating atmosphere, and an Alpha who suddenly found the crown upon his head impossibly heavy, and his grand victory utterly, terrifyingly hollow. The most expensive act of disdain is, and always will be, absolute silence. Narrator. The biting frost of the night she walked away from Blackwood was nothing compared to the absolute zero of the unforgiving wilderness that eagerly awaited her outside its borders. Beyond the safety of the southern territories lay the Phantom Peaks, a jagged, treacherous mountain range where the wind did not merely blow, it shrieked like tortured spirits, slicing through flesh and bone. Evelyn wandered into this white abyss with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the hollow cavern in her chest where her heart used to beat. For the first few days, survival was a mechanical instinct. The cerulean silk dress, once a symbol of her quiet elegance, was now shredded and frozen, clinging to her emaciated frame like a burial shroud. Her bare feet bled into the snow, leaving a trail of crimson rubies on the immaculate white canvas of the north. Physical pain was a mercy, a sharp, screaming distraction from the suffocating agony of her betrayal. But the wilderness is a brutal, impartial judge. It does not care about broken hearts or stolen crowns. It only respects the will to exist. On the 7th night of her exile, a blizzard of apocalyptic proportions descended upon the peaks. Evelyn collapsed at the base of an ancient, hollowed pine, her core temperature plummeting as the lethal embrace of hypothermia began to sing her to sleep. The memories of Adrian's golden hall, the warmth of the roaring fireplaces, and the triumphant smirk on Victoria's face flickered behind her heavy eyelids. It would be so easy to close her eyes. It would be so peaceful to let the snow bury her failures and become a nameless ghost in the ice. Yet, as the darkness crept into her peripheral vision, the dormant wolf within her soul stirred. It was not a howl of despair, but a feral, earth-shattering snarl of absolute defiance. Why should she die in the dark while the architect of her misery basked in the light? Why should her profound, ancient magic perish because a blind, arrogant boy could not comprehend its worth? In that freezing twilight, a terrifying metamorphosis occurred. Evelyn, the subservient healer who had only ever channeled her life force to mend others, finally turned her magic inward. The golden, warm aura that used to flow from her hands mutated. To survive the extreme cold, her magic adapted, consuming the ambient frost, drawing the very essence of the winter storm into her veins. Her emerald eyes snapped open, glowing with a piercing, glacial luminescence. She stopped fighting the cold and instead swallowed it whole, merging her spirit with the absolute zero of the mountain. The girl who had bled to save a king died under that ancient pine. From her icy cocoon, a new entity emerged, a predator forged from hardened ice, bitter winds, and a resolve so dense it could shatter steel. She was no longer a vessel for others' salvation. She was the master of her own savage dominion. Narrator. Just as the wilderness threatened to turn her into a creature of pure, unfeeling instinct, she found herself face to face with a living myth born of ice and shadows. Evelyn was hunting a massive snowworm, her movements sharp, silent, and lethal, when the atmosphere around her suddenly thickened, heavy with a suffocating primal aura. The snow ceased falling, suspended midair by the sheer gravitational pull of an immense power. Stepping from the blizzard's veil was a man who looked less like a mortal Alpha and more like a primordial god of war. This was Kaelen, the Supreme Alpha of the Winterborne Pack, the mythical northern warlord whose name was only whispered in the south to frighten disobedient children. Unlike Adrian, whose power was dressed in tailored suits and political speeches, Kaelen's dominance was raw, carved from violence and survival. He stood at 6'5", his broad shoulders draped in a heavy cloak of dire wolf fur. His face was a striking map of aristocratic angles marred by a jagged, silver scar that ran across his left eye, a testament to battles fought on the front lines, not from behind a mahogany desk. His remaining eye, a piercing, abyssal obsidian, locked onto Evelyn. He did not see a ragged, wandering outcast. His gaze pierced through her frostbitten skin, recognizing the terrifying, concentrated magic humming within her veins. Supreme Alpha Kaelen. You hunt in my domain, little wolf. Narrator. Evelyn did not bow. She did not flinch. She stood tall amidst the corpses of her prey, her glacial green eyes meeting his fathomless black stare with equal intensity. Evelyn. The domain belongs to those strong enough to survive it, Alpha. Narrator. A slow, dangerous smile crept across Kaelen's scarred face. In a world where every creature either cowered before him or sought to manipulate him, this woman stood in his bloody snow, challenging his dominion with nothing but her own unyielding spirit. At that exact moment, a tectonic shift occurred within the very fabric of their souls. The mythical mating bond, an ancient magic neither of them had expected, flared to life, not as a gentle, romantic spark, but as a violent collision of two unstoppable forces. Yet, Kaelen did not rush forward to claim her like a possession. He extended a massive, calloused hand, not demanding her obedience, but offering a silent, monumental challenge. He offered her a place among the apex predators, recognizing her instantly not as a follower, but as a queen who possessed the very iron needed to forge an empire out of the frozen wastelands. Taking his hand, Evelyn realized that true power was not found in healing a weak man, but in standing shoulder to shoulder with a monster who respected the lethal sharpness of her fangs. Narrator. The transition from a discarded southern outcast to the beating, ruthless heart of the most formidable pack in the hemisphere was paved not with gold, but with blood, brilliant strategy, and undeniable power. Integrating into the Winterborne Pack was a trial by fire, or rather, by ice. The northern wolves respected nothing but absolute strength, and they initially looked upon the slender, southern-born woman with veiled contempt. But Evelyn did not seek their affection. She commanded their reverence. When a mysterious, ancient blight swept through the northern guard, rotting the flesh of Kaelen's greatest warriors, traditional medicine failed. It was Evelyn who stepped into the quarantine zones. She did not merely heal them, she weaponized her evolved magic, drawing the necrotic poison out and turning it into a crystalline frost that she shattered into dust. She saved their armies, earning the fanatical, undying loyalty of the most brutal military force on the continent. Her ascension to the role of Luna was not a ceremonial handover of power, it was a conquest. She stood beside Kaelen not as a decorative piece of political leverage, but as his greatest strategist. Remembering Adrian's arrogant words about political supremacy, Evelyn systematically dismantled the southern trade routes that supplied Blackwood, securing monopolies on the rare luminescent crystals and medicinal herbs exclusive to the Phantom Peaks. She orchestrated treaties with the savage rogue factions of the East, bringing them to heel with a mixture of terrifying displays of cryomancy and unparalleled diplomatic cunning. The Winterborne Pack, once a reclusive society of warriors, rapidly evolved into a sprawling, wealthy empire under her meticulous design. Kaelen watched her orchestrate this grand symphony of dominance with a dark, profound pride. He never once felt threatened by her brilliance. When she sat upon the throne carved of black ice in the great obsidian hall of Winterborne, she was a terrifying vision of absolute authority. Her cerulean gowns were replaced by majestic, midnight blue armor tailored to her slender frame, a crown of jagged frost resting upon her head. She was no longer a secret kept in the dark to nurse a broken boy. She was the Empress of Frost, a deity of survival and intellect. The entire North bowed to her, not because she was the Alpha's mate, but because she had forged their prosperity with her own two hands. Word of the North's miraculous rise, and their terrifying unnamed new Luna, began to drift southward on the freezing winds, reaching the very people who had once thrown her away. Narrator. While the North flourished under the reign of a true queen, the South rotted from the inside out, choking on the very political vanity that had built its fragile foundation. 5 years after Evelyn's departure, Alpha Adrian's grand vision of a southern empire had collapsed into a pathetic pile of ash. Victoria, the perfect piece for the throne, proved to be as useful as a diamond shield in a real war, glamorous, but entirely brittle. When a severe famine struck the southern lands, followed by border skirmishes with desperate rogue packs, Victoria offered only complaints about the lack of silk imports, hiding in her chambers while the pack bled. Adrian, devoid of the miraculous healing magic that used to sustain his frail constitution, found his old wounds reopening, his strength failing, and his spirit breaking under the weight of genuine leadership. The allies Victoria's name had bought quickly abandoned them when the gold ran out. Blackwood was starving, dying, and desperate. Left with no other option to save his people from total annihilation, Adrian requested an emergency summit with the rising Northern Empire, traveling to the Phantom Peaks to beg for a treaty, supplies, and military protection. He walked into the colossal, intimidating obsidian hall of Winterborne, a broken man, shivering beneath his extravagant furs, the heavy crown on his head looking like a mocking jester's hat. The Northern Guard stood like statues of lethal black steel, ignoring his presence entirely as he was led to the throne room. At the end of the hall, seated upon two magnificent thrones of ice and shadow, were the rulers of the North. Kaelen sat with a relaxed, predatory grace, his obsidian eye watching the Southern Alpha with mild, bored amusement. But it was the figure seated beside him that caused Adrian's heart to stop dead in his chest. There, draped in dark, regal armor, her emerald eyes glowing with cold, ancient power, sat Evelyn. Adrian's knees buckled, the air was violently sucked from his lungs. He stared at the majestic, terrifying goddess before him, his mind violently rejecting reality before plunging into the deepest abyss of despair. This was the woman he had discarded for lacking political supremacy. This was the healer he thought would die in the snow. Now, she held the fate of his entire world between her fingertips. He opened his mouth, a pathetic mixture of regret, pleading, and his forgotten love attempting to form words. Alpha Adrian. Evie, is that really you? Please, my pack is dying. Forgive me, I was blind. Narrator. Evelyn did not flinch. She did not sneer. She simply looked down at him with an expression of absolute, devastating indifference. It was the look one gives a dying insect on the pavement. There was no anger left, no desire to scream, no need to flaunt her victory. Her vengeance was not delivered through fire or swords. It was delivered through the sheer, crushing magnitude of her superiority. Empress Evelyn, Alpha Adrian of Blackwood. You stand before the Empress of the North. Address me correctly, or you will freeze before you ever reach your borders. Narrator. Adrian fell to his knees on the freezing floor, the cold seeping into his bones, weeping not just for his dying pack, but for the horrifying realization that in his pursuit of a cheap crown, he had thrown away the only true queen the world had ever known. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating, the ultimate retribution of a healer who had finally learned how to kill with nothing but her shadow. Evelyn's journey from a discarded, broken healer to the formidable Empress of Frost stands as a breathtaking testament to the resilience of the spirit and the transformative power of self-worth. Cast out into the unforgiving wilderness by a man who valued superficial alliances over genuine substance, she did not merely survive the absolute zero of the Phantom Peaks, she allowed it to reforge her. By turning her magic inward, she ceased being a vessel for others' salvation and became the master of her own destiny. Her union with Kaelen, the Supreme Alpha of the North, was not born of necessity, but of mutual respect between two apex predators who recognized the uncompromising strength within each other. While the Winterborne Pack flourished into an unstoppable empire under her brilliant, ruthless intellect, the fragile southern territories crumbled under the weight of Adrian and Victoria's vanity and incompetence. In the end, Adrian's desperate surrender before her throne of ice was the ultimate poetic justice. Evelyn did not need to raise a hand to destroy the man who broke her. Her crushing success and absolute indifference were the sharpest blades of vengeance. The ashes of the Blackwood crown serve as a grim reminder that true power is never given, it is forged in the coldest depths of adversity, waiting for the moment we finally decide to stop bleeding for those who cannot comprehend our worth. True power is not found in endless sacrifice for those who are blind to your value, but in the courage to walk away and invest that energy into your own evolution. Evelyn's metamorphosis teaches us that the darkest, most freezing moments of betrayal and heartbreak can serve as the exact catalyst needed to discover our greatest strengths. In modern life, we often find ourselves playing the healer, overextending our time, love, and resources in relationships, workplaces, or friendships that do not reciprocate. We drain ourselves trying to prove our worth to people who only view us as a convenience. The practical application here is to stop pouring your life force into empty vessels. Set fierce boundaries. Take the energy you have been using to fix others and use it to build your own empire, whether that is your career, your mental health, or your personal passions. When you fully respect your own worth, you will naturally attract a pack that recognizes your true value, and those who took you for granted will inevitably have to watch you thrive from the shadows of their own stagnation. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic situation or relationship to finally discover your own true strength? Please take a moment to share your stories and perspectives in the comments section below. It is always amazing to learn from each other's experiences and draw inspiration from this community. If you enjoyed this story and found value in the lesson, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. Your encouragement gives us the motivation to keep producing more incredible and inspiring content for you in the future.